A well-developed backstory is an essential tool to make your D&D character feel realistic and ground them to the world. Or is it? There is a silent debate going on in the D&D community about the depth of backstory needed for your character. Both sides of each extreme are not conducive to a fun time at the game table. With too little of a backstory, your dungeon master might not have any plot threads to weave around your character, and they will have little connection to the party and the greater world around you. They are a blank slate, but one which is the square hole to the round peg if everyone else in the party created backstories. On the other hand, if you create a 20-page backstory about your character and their experiences, it creates many more problems. Firstly, your dungeon master has a life outside of the game and likely won't read all of that. Secondly, it leaves little room for growth and development of the character. Those types of overly developed backstories are often the ones where somehow a level 1 character has killed gods.
Sorry, I'm sorry, a Lich King at level 1, or should I say, sorry, at this stage in your life, you've killed a Lich King.
Or might explain in too much detail who the character is and who they know. After a certain point, it leaves little room for the dungeon master's creative freedom with the direction your character goes, or how much of that backstory actually fits with the tone and setting of their universe. Backstories are an important part of character creation, beyond just who your character knows and where they are from. It can inform how your character acts and why, in the same manner as your experiences in real life shape how you react to different scenarios. I have a solution to this problem that meets somewhere in the middle, though it does lean a little more towards a vague backstory. Before I explain my favorite way to create a backstory, a little context is required. I've been playing tabletop RPGs since grade 9 of high school, so half a decade at least. My high school group only played during the lunch hour, which was realistically 45 minutes after eating. Take away the inevitable times from jokes and cleaning up the dice and miniatures, and that's a 35-minute long session. This combined with playing at low levels along with switching campaigns and game systems between Pathfinder and D&D meant that I really wasn't playing any character for a long period of time. Because of this, I never really developed rich backstories. I had my personality, bond, flaw, and the dungeon master helped my character fit into the setting. For instance, tying my barbarian to a tribe which I was exiled from, and who were the primary antagonists that burned down a town the party was allied with. Then after COVID started and my old D&D group parted ways, I luckily found a new group through my post-secondary institution. I was excited to play a necromancer named Valcor the Raven, and worked with the DM to develop some basic backstory details. Upon playing the game, our DM accidentally made us take on an encounter that was a much higher level than we could handle at level 1. Some saber-toothed tigers took us out in a surprise round, rolled crits, and destroyed us in one round. But rather than retconning the TPK, despite being only a few sessions in, we accepted our fate. This mistake ended up putting the campaign on a new trajectory, which I'm glad happened because it's been fun. With my wizard being eaten by animals, I knew that I wanted my new character to be strong. From prior discussions with my previous group, I knew that half-orc barbarians are a physically strong combination. This formed the basis for Olzog the Impaler, my favorite character I've ever played. We were informed by the DM that our new characters would begin in what is essentially the fantasy version of Vegas in the middle of a desert. So this had inspired my thought that he could be a gladiator in a coliseum. The title of Impaler came to my mind, which made my weapon choice a D10 glaive, rather than the more powerful D12 that a great axe awards you. For the first session with our new party, I had no more development than my personality, bond, and flaw. I had a vague suggestion to the DM that my character was kidnapped from his orc tribe as a child and sold into service as a gladiator, and might be a hero of prophecy. Charisma as my dump stat meant I didn't exude charm, which led to the creation of my character's iconic introductory line, "I'm Olzog, I fight." The dungeon master creating a circumstance in which dragons destroyed the city as we attempted to flee gave me a huge development of Olzog's character, his hatred for dragons. Choosing the Wild Magic subclass at level 3, mainly because I enjoyed hearing about Sips's hijinks in the Fool's Gold campaign, created yet another level of flavor to develop the depth of my character. Though like the dragon thing, it didn't develop my backstory too much, if you consider backstory to be everything prior to the start of the campaign. It wasn't until we were fighting a Tanaruk in the sewers that my character's backstory began to form. I asked the dungeon master if I could use a history check to see if I knew anything about the creature. He described how as the chief of my tribe, my father told me stories about how they can be created when an orc gets greedy with power, and that entire bloodlines can be ruined by the demonic influence. It was that one simple history check which made me begin thinking about how I could further develop my character. playing the campaign definitely helped me get a hold of Olzog's personality more, so I am glad that I waited with fully developing his backstory until much later. Don't just take my word for it. Here's Laura Bailey of Critical Role discussing that concept.
You know, we created the characters on a lark as just this fun thing, but as you live and breathe them for 10 years, you find out so many things about them that, you know, we didn't think about in the first game. All of that backstory and the character traits and everything, those come out as you're playing. And I think that's the fun thing about it, is you get to discover the characters.
As the campaign went further along, the other players expressed interest in having a roleplay session where we discussed our backstories. This was the catalyst for finally sitting down and developing at least somewhat of a backstory, though there are still a couple gaps remaining to this day that the DM will have a final say on. Over the prior months of playing Olzog, I had come up with several potential ideas of what could be in his backstory. The upcoming reveal gave me a fair bit of inspiration, and I was legitimately having random thoughts about my character at 3 AM and couldn't sleep until I wrote those things down. It certainly helped that my character's city was destroyed already, so I could make up elements that might not have been present otherwise, but still kept things consistent with what little of the city I knew about. I knew who my opponent was supposed to be the day of the dragon attack, and that I'd been propped up as a hero within the city, no matter how performative that heroism may have been. I made up a reason for him being my opponent, and tied it into my bond of my weapon being important to me. This was developed into my mentor teaching me how to fight, that my opponent was forced to kill him, and that I took up my former mentor's glaive. I also tied this into events that were further into the campaign, with my character believing that extreme taxation from an evil group may have been the cause for unrest in the city, causing the Colosseum owners to satisfy the bloodthirsty crowd with a once-in-a-lifetime spectacle. When introducing my character, the DM described me as wearing jewelry with women on each arm as I entered the tavern. I combined this with a Watsky lyric, to be jewelry in which the victor returns the next day, staying consistent with the gladiators being tools to be exploited by the Colosseum owners. Similar to how you don't tell your entire life story to your coworkers, this method of backstory allows you to fill in rich details while encountering something new. As we've been playing, I've been making up stuff as we go. We were hunting down a secret society of cultists, and found some robes in a basement study. My character looked to see if there were any names stitched into the robes, because the gladiators' outfits had their names in them to keep uniforms organized. It's small things like that that I've been making up, and at least one of the other players likes how I'm able to tie present things into my backstory, in the same realistic way that past experiences inspire present reactions. It's not large things either, so I'm not altering too much to the point of retconning anything or metagaming. Without describing every minutia that my now 5 pages of backstory holds, the method that I took to build my backstory allowed me flexibility to get a hold on my character's disposition, and to create a more rounded character that took in experiences from the past to inform the future. To turn all my scattered thoughts here into actionable advice, at minimum, you need a goal or motivation that your character is striving towards. This may tie itself into the backstory as something the character was lacking, or as simply something the character was already working towards prior to meeting the party. Obviously, you need enough backstory detail to know how your character acts, and for the DM to pull strings behind the scenes. But beyond that, your backstory gives you the freedom to make things up as you go, and create stronger connections with the world and the party because of that. I suppose you could call this method a flexible backstory, due to its allowance of modification and not everything being set in stone. You can also keep vague broad details, or dive deep into specifics and intricate details. Whatever it is, please keep your Dungeon Master informed and ensure that everything fits the tone of their world. When it comes to making your backstory, at the end of the day, you know the most about your own character. Like many aspects of this game, what you choose ultimately depends on what works best for you and your group. If you all prefer a certain method of backstory creation, then you can completely disregard this video and do whatever creates a sense of cohesion within your group. Thanks for watching. I have more content like this if you're interested. Goodbye.